This is a great question to start off with. Yes, definitely could be related to your pelvic floor. There is a muscle, the puborectalis, that wraps directly around the rectum. So this is what I'm always referring to when I'm talking about why a deep squat or a squatty potty is important for a bowel movement, because it changes the angle of the rectum. So tension directly related to that will affect that. We also have our pelvic floor muscles that attach back at the tailbone, so that all-encompassing bowl. The pudendal nerve supplies the pelvic area and is usually like perineal pain, vulva burning. It can also be rectal pain, rectal fullness, a golf ball in the rectum feeling. As well as we can talk about tearing during delivery. And when we have those deeper tears, if you tear into the level of the sphincter or have any sort of internal or external sphincter issues, that can all be related. So lots of different avenues to consider. Hip flexors could be weak, or if they're chronically tight, consider your pelvic position and what's going on at your respiratory diaphragm. So the psoas inserts directly there. Let's take somebody who has a rib flare with a constantly wide and flared up ribs. What that really tells us is the diaphragm is constantly in a descended or inhaled state. When we inhale, the diaphragm lowers, and so the psoas is never getting a chance to relax. Now, when we can exhale fully, ascend the diaphragm, we can change that, as well as our pelvic position. And I did a post on this before, so I'm going to share it after this.
Are your hip flexors tight or weak? Maybe it's neither option. Let's take a minute to consider that muscles can only function as far as the bony position that they're put in. In this instance of the psoas, it's the pelvis and the spine. Psoas also shares a connection to the diaphragm.
This is a good question. When you are doing a deadlift of any sort, you need to connect your foot to what's happening at the pelvis. And so if your foot is rolling out and supinating, your hip is not internally rotating. When we internally rotate at the hip, the sits bones open so that the femur can come back into internal rotation and the pelvis can move as well. So that's a huge thing to think about if you're struggling with not improving your pelvic floor or your glutes, is that you're not actually getting that full range of motion because you're cheating that exercise from working as it properly should. So you need to hone in on the foot and see what's going on. Can you feel all of the connections? So if this was my big toe, base of your big toe, base of your biggie toe, pinky toe, and then the inner arch at your heel, and can you feel that connection as the hips hinge back? And if you can't hinge well, you might struggle with posterior. So you might have posterior pelvic floor tightness. You're going to need to think about, are you hinging through the back of the pelvic floor? Can you get that full length happening at the sits bones to lengthen through the glutes? If you don't, your body's going to compensate somewhere else to make that hinge appear as if it's happening, and you're not truly getting it from the hips and the foot. So breathing on a block, hinge breathing is really big, as well as opening and breathing into the back of the rib cage, because if we can't breathe into here, we can't breathe into the back of the pelvic floor.
Hello, my name is Anarias.